If you have a loved one that needs help, but they don't want to get help, then the solution is not to try and force them to get help is wrong. Forcing someone to get help is sometimes the most important thing that we can do for someone that we love, that we're not sure about whether or not they are ready to get help. You'll hear it very often said by many people who think addiction is what they know. Addiction and how to help people is what they know. To say that a person cannot be forced to get help until they're ready. I find this not something that's true. I think my experience too tells me that that isn't true, because addiction is something that I've struggled with and something that I know I do, not because just for me. I do it for others. I do it for the people that I love. I do it for the people that I care about. I do it for the greater good of this world that I love and humanity. I do it because I want to be a participating member of this world where I contribute in a productive way. I don't want to be just a selfish person that sits there and thinks solely about themselves as the reason why I get sober. It works for many people, and that's something that works for them, and bravo to them that it works for them. But for me, addiction is something that I don't really aspire to continue to have. And addiction is something that I don't feel I have right now. Now, people can say an addict who hasn't had a lot of clean times, an addict who shouldn't speak, is an addict who doesn't have the knowledge or the wisdom to be able to assess their own addiction and to be able to say the things that work. But the things that work are simple. The things that work are well known. People know what works. We all know what works. So if something works for one person, but it doesn't work for them that day, but it works for a bunch of other people on a different day, it doesn't mean that that addict is wrong, because they could try it again and they could get it and get it 100% and never use again. The people that are wrong are the people that say, hey, you shouldn't talk. You should, get more sober time so you have a little more wisdom behind you so that you're a wiser person. I would say that this is valid if you're an addict that is fresh into recovery. And you really don't have a lot of knowledge, and you don't really know what recovery is about. And for addicts who've never gotten help, this is a lot of what they experience, which is I remember what I experienced. I didn't know what AA was. I didn't know what the recovery was. I didn't know what rehab was really going to be about. I didn't know there were other avenues in which addicts could be forced to get clean, and a lot of it could be the things that still work, but in a different way. See, accountability is the thing that makes an addict stop better than what people think, I believe. And accountability is something that I have, but accountability is something I have for myself. See, my daughter is someone that was involved in my addiction because she was someone that helped me a lot. And she was someone who's never really, as far as I know, she isn't someone that was raised around addiction. It was something that I hid from them very well. And that statement itself may be an alarm bell for people who have lots of recovery time and experience in addiction and recovery and rehabs and being counselors. That's a red flag. No, he's in denial. There's no way a child could be in an environment and not know that their parent was using. He has no clue about what he's talking about, because right there it proves that he's ignorant. Maybe so, but you could ask my daughter, and I'm pretty sure she would agree with me, because people can assess themselves pretty well, and we pretty much are on our own when we deal with our own recovery. We can get advice and guidance from people who tell us what the right thing to do is, but the real way to help somebody to give advice that's valid is you have to sit and listen, know their story, know who they are, know what is the things that make them tick as a human being, know who they love, know what they are about work or about life, their hobbies, and the things that they love to eat, maybe the different layers of things that make a person up. And you have to be able to connect those things with what addiction does to them. Addiction to a person is not a universal thing. People don't do it for this one simple reason. It isn't trauma. It isn't child molestation, or it isn't rape. It isn't all those things. And those are extremely severe things that happen to people that are real, that drive people to addiction, to numb the pain, numb the trauma that they experience. And it is nothing that I would take lightly, because it's nothing that I would expect anyone to take lightly when somebody says that. It's an extremely serious thing that you never know to the degree that it affects them in present. And it's something that I don't take lightly when I hear with somebody. When somebody says that to me or somebody speaks about it, it's like, shut up and let them talk. Because whether or not it's the degree of severity to them is something that you can't tell, because some people hide it better than others. There are traumas of those sorts, different types of traumas. Any kind of trauma that leads someone into addiction can be the kind of trauma that somebody says, this is what is causing you to use. They can go ahead and do that. I'm not really concerned about that aspect of addiction, although many may say that is the root cause of what you need to discover and flesh out in order to be able to help somebody. Well, I disagree. I think it's true. I think it would help. I think they're right. But I also think that they may be overthinking and over analyzing a situation that is a far simpler. Addiction is unique to each person, and recovery is unique to each person. But the simplicity of what it is that we have to do is the actions that we take and we don't take. Addiction, an addict, is someone simply a person that likes to use drugs, a person who is forced to use drugs by their own inner self, a person who is physically addicted, a person who is psychologically addicted, a person who just thinks it's normal and they don't realize that they're an addict. But that kind of person is at the beginning of their addiction more than likely, and is the kind of person that I'm not really talking about. The kind of addicts I'm talking about are similar to the kind of addicts that I've been, and that's the addict that's used long term, that knows hardcore drugs, has tried every kind of drug there could be. Many I haven't tried, and I'm glad I haven't. But the hardcore drugs of meth, heroin, fentanyl, crack, that's about it. Those are the big guys. Marijuana. That's the drug people take into they analyze marijuana in factors similar to crack or similar to meth and heroin. It's like, no, I don't think it's in the same class. It's a different kind of drug. It's a different kind of severity. It's a different kind of severity for anybody, if it's a severity at all. It's still something that people can use and get impaired, and they go drive and they could go burn into a tree. People that drive high, I think, at any kind of drug at all are idiots for doing so. And that's something that I absolutely am lucky that I didn't do. Alcohol is something too that's a main monster in all of this, and it's probably the number one big beast behind all of these addictions that can take the banner for for doing the most harm to our country and to our citizens and to our family members. So if somebody doesn't want to get high, but they don't know how to ask for help, but they're not ready to get help. Their friends are going to be the ones that know them the most. If they fall under this idea that is really more of an idea rather than a truism that they hear or they decide is something that's valid, where, well, they want to get help, but they're not ready. You can't force them to get help. And you're somebody who's concerned because you love them a whole lot and you have a lot of patience and you want them to get help. Don't listen to that person. Even if they're an addict that's been there, been around the block, has been through recovery a few times. If they're an active addict, their point is valid. If they're an addict that's in recovery, short term, beginning, their point is valid. If they're an addict that's had years and years and years of sobriety, their point is not valid. I wouldn't take a word of what they said for truth when it comes to a statement like that. I would say that they're probably just misinformed. I mean, they're misinformed because they just drink the Kool-Aid and they think that that's the right way to do it. But if I'm rude to those people of long-term sobriety, it's only because I don't have any degree of respect for people that sometimes turn away fresh addicts who look for help and then say, you know what, you're not ready. Come back, go keep running around the block and go keep getting high until you're ready. And that's the fact that people say that. And it's talked about in talks, it's talked about in the AA rooms, it's talked about in all the AA variants of rooms. I've heard it before on many different occasions. It's true, it's real, it happens. Some of the groups and some of the meetings of specific groups, they may not have that opinion. But a lot of these meetings where groups are established members for years, where they come to the same place and they become friends, and the amount of variation that they have in traffic of new members or people that come in to participate or just listen in on the group may vary. But the main members tend to be the same ones, and they're great. They're the ones who can make the great advice, and they're the ones who can give the worst advice too. It's a mixed bag, but overall, something like AA is overall something that should be respected and it should be looked at as a real way for people to get help. Not the number one way, not the complete way, not the whole overall. It shouldn't be the umbrella of everybody should follow, because in the way that society works and the way that our understanding of the human minds and of addiction works, there are so many different avenues for people to get help, so many different ways to get help. And the simplest way to get help for me is to say, if you want to get help and you want to stop using, right? And you're not ready, right? Don't believe that, right? You can be forced to be ready. Your family could do an intervention on you. Those work all the time, and you're forced to go get help. And people, and I don't know what the opinions on those are. And the courts, go ahead, get arrested or get arrested. I was an addict who at times almost deliberately got himself arrested, not because I wanted to get arrested, but but, but because I was a dummy. I was a dumbass, as many addicts are, who just didn't give a shit about getting arrested at some point. And I was, if I was arrested, then I would have deserved to be arrested. But I wasn't arrested until I really deserved it. And when I deserved it, it was because of addiction. It was because I was getting high, and I really deserved it. But if that's the case for many other people too, when I went through that system, it was my probation officer that made it so that I got sober. I think she never violated me. She did draw. I don't know. She wrote me up one time. She was amazing. She was a gift from God for me because she really cared. And probation officers, they get a bad rap a lot of times, especially from addicts who are trying to like weasel their way through through the system and still get high. And we all do it. Addicts do it. We all do it. We all try and still sneak one in or sneak two in or try. And some do it. Some are successful. Some get through it still using because the system just works in their favor in that way. We got a piss test, and piss tests, they're not reliable, but they are reliable too. But they're also reliable when we know we're going to get them, depending on the degree of severity of our probation. And probation is something all I know about. I don't know about parole, and parole is different. Parole is a different animal as far as I know, but I'm guessing it's probably similar. But if you're somebody who's on probation, you're being forced, if you agree with your probation officer, that you're not going to get high. Otherwise, she's going to send you or he's going to send you to jail. And you're going to serve out the term of your sentence, which is probably non-existent if you get through clean for the probationary period that they've allowed you. And it's been, and you're lucky to have it. If you want thrown into jail right away because you're like not, because it's like your first time, second time, or whatever, and sometimes it can be more than that, you're lucky. The courts don't want us to be in jail. The courts want us to be out. I mean, people say that the systems in courts are just corrupt, but my experience, it wasn't that. I had a probation officer that really cared, and she cared about helping, and I know that, and I really believe that, and I'm grateful to her for having, for having scared me a few times, in the way that she could. She wasn't mean. She wasn't. She was just like, she was great, and I got the message because I didn't want to keep getting high, and I went ahead and told the line according to what the rules were that I had to follow in order to complete my probation, and I was lucky to do it, and I'm glad that I did it. So that's the case of like I was forced. I was forced, right? People can be forced to get sober, and there are different ways to do it. And the best way to do it is if the person wants to get sober. But sometimes people don't know they want to get sober until they have a little bit of clean time. The clarity that they get when they're sober is something that is not unique to most people to understand what it's like to want life when you haven't had life that you've really wanted to live, because addiction has been the life that you've lived. And when that's the life that you've lived, it's really appealing for you to change your life when you have sober time. Sober time can also be viewed as something boring and uninteresting by an addict who, all they're used to is running amok and just trying to get high. That's the next high. Their lives and their time is extremely important to them because anybody who interrupts their day getting high or getting the shit that they need or getting the come up that they're trying to get or trying to get into the midway of their hustle or just mess up their sour mood is someone who is just, just doesn't understand or just in the way. And people who help those people can sometimes have a tough time because we have to deal with that. People, and I've dealt with that with people. There's no specific person in mind whatsoever. I've dealt with it with other people as well. I experienced it with many people that I've tried to help, and I've been lucky enough to help some, and I've been lucky enough to help some, and know what it's like to feel that sense of hope when you take somebody to rehab, and then and feel that hope, and then a couple of days later you find out that they went ahead and ditched rehab because they couldn't take the pain of detox, and that happens all the time. But people can be forced and people can be told, you have to do it with a kind heart. You have to do it with love. Family members can make a big difference in people wanting to get sober when they didn't know they needed to get sober. The reality of being loved is something that people can sometimes underplay as a possible way for people to help their addict family member or addict family friend or addict family loved one to want to get sober. They may just feel that addiction is just their crutch. It's going to be something eternal because they've lost everyone. Nobody loves them. They're just not cared about because they're pariahs in the family and the family events. They just aren't wanted. But the truth is, when they know that they're loved, when they're at the darkest points and we're not even there, it can make a tremendous difference, is what I believe. And I believe that interventionists can be the ones to speak to this probably far more than I. That when you really want to get sober, it isn't the only time that it can happen. They're not going to catch you exactly at the right moment and get you to take a plane ticket or get you to go to a rehab to do an intake or to get you to try to you know to be a patient that day. And that's what they try to do. They try to get you to go right away. They gather the family members, they all meet you, they jump you on because they love you, they say all kinds of nice things or they cry, and they make you feel the pain of what it is that they're experiencing in a way that is healthy, I believe, but it's hurtful too. That kind of courage that a family member takes in order to do something like that for a loved one. They're not doing it to them, they're doing it for them. It isn't a last ditch effort, but it takes a lot, and it can be something that backfires if that loved one just doesn't respond. And that can happen too. It's a risk, but it's a risk worth taking, I believe. But the family members need to be united in that front, that they all agree that if that person who they do the intervention to doesn't want to go, then they have to cut all ties completely with them and let them just hang in the breeze, hang in the wind. Just let them suffer complete, that nobody loves them. And this is an awful way to say it, but hopefully, if they don't die, they'll go get help right away, because it's life and death for addictions. And those addicts, who could get help even when they didn't know it, are the ones that you may be saving by taking the chance that statement, you can't help an addict until they want to get help, is wrong, and you disagree, and you try. And because you tried, you succeed in seeing that barrier was a lot thinner, and they really did want to get help. They just needed to be asked and pushed just a little bit. And if you're that person, you're a hero in my book for taking the chance on doing that, because that's an amazing thing to do to somebody, to help save their life. And that's what matters. You want to save their life, because if they're dead, that's worse. You carry that forever. Addiction can go away. Death is something that you carry forever. So take a chance and try. Your loved one's worth it. The person you love is worth it. Keep trying. Don't give up on them ever. Don't ever give up on them.